When Joseph R. Biden Jr. was sworn in as the 46th President of the United States on Wednesday, January 20th, 2021, it was a moment of triumph for America that had been in the making for decades. His long career in public office spanned 8 presidents, from Richard M. Nixon to Barack Obama, but he couldn't catch the nation's highest office for himself. Now, Biden, 79, finally joins their ranks. It all started with an Irish Catholic family in northeastern Pennsylvania. Joseph Biden Jr. was born in 1942, the oldest son of Joseph R. Biden Sr. and Catherine Eugenia Finnegan Biden. The Biden family moved to Delaware when he was 10 years old. After graduating law school at Syracuse University, Biden started up his career in local politics in Delaware, winning election to the Newcastle County Council in 1970. 2 years later, at just 29 years old, he ran against a well-known Republican incumbent, Senator James Caleb Boggs. A former Delaware governor, Biden won in major upset. Weeks after Biden's victory, his wife, Nelia, and their 13-month-old daughter, Naomi, were killed in a tragic car accident. Biden considered forfeiting the Senate seat that he had just won, but was persuaded to keep the position. He was sworn in at the hospital where his sons were treated for their injuries from the crash. As senator, Biden commuted to Washington by train, a routine that allowed him to return home to his children each night. In the 1970s, he was a vocal opponent of busing. Decades later, he would come under fire after recalling working with segregationist senators during his early years in the Senate. As time went on, he gained popularity in the chamber, becoming the top Democrat on the Judiciary Committee and then the panel's chairman. In 1977, he married Jill Jacobs. They would later have a daughter named Ashley. In 1987, Biden began his first presidential campaign, aiming to win Democratic nomination the following year. The 44-year-old candidate presented himself as representing a new generation and declared, quote, "We must rekindle the fire of idealism in this country." But his bid was taken off course by a plagiarism scandal, and he dropped out of the race months before the first nominating contest. His presidential hopes crumbled right in front of his eyes. In early 1988, Biden faced a far worse dilemma, a life-threatening brain aneurysm that required emergency surgery. After the initial surgery to remove the aneurysm, he had another surgery for a second brain aneurysm. Later that year, he returned to the Senate after a 7th-month break of absence. As the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Biden presided over confirmation hearings for 6 Supreme Court nominees, including Robert H. Bork, whose nomination Biden succeeded in defeating, and Clarence Thomas. The memory of the Thomas hearings would linger for decades as Biden faced criticism for his handling of Anita Hill's testimony before his committee. Biden also left his mark on consequential legislation, playing a leading role in passing the 1994 crime bill, which would become associated with mass incarceration. The Violence Against Women Act, one of Biden's top legislative achievements, became law as part of the crime bill. Biden immersed himself in foreign policy during his decades as a senator, rising to serve as chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. In 2002, he voted to authorize the war in Iraq, a vote that he later called a mistake. 2 decades after his first presidential bid collapsed, Biden decided to try again in the 2008 election. Now in his 60s, he ran as a leader steeped in foreign policy, but he stumbled immediately when he described Barack Obama, then a fellow senator and presidential rival, as the, quote, "first mainstream African American who is articulate, bright, clean, and a nice-looking guy." Biden's campaign didn't gain traction, and he dropped out after finishing in 5th place. After Obama won the Democratic presidential nomination in 2008, he selected Biden to be his running mate. The choice added a dose of foreign policy experience to the ticket and began a close political relationship between the two men. As vice president, Biden oversaw the implementation of the 2009 stimulus package and later headed the administration's cancer moonshot program. A skilled retail politician, Biden is known for his tactile style, embracing one-on-one interactions on the campaign trail and elsewhere. Biden came under scrutiny in the Me Too era, with a number of women saying he had touched them in ways that made them feel uncomfortable. Decades after losing his first wife and daughter, Biden faced another family tragedy in 2015. His son Beau, who followed him into politics and served 2 terms as Delaware's Attorney General, died of brain cancer at 46. Biden cited his son's death and the grieving that followed when he announced he would not run for president in 2016. After leaving office as vice president, he published a memoir and gave paid speeches, earning millions of dollars. He campaigned for Democratic candidates ahead of the 2018 midterm elections. In the first months of 2019, the Democratic presidential field grew larger and larger, and Biden showed no urgency to declare his candidacy. He finally jumped into the race in late April, denouncing President Trump as a threat to the nation's character. Despite his stature as a former vice president, Biden struggled to attract primary voters who were turned off by his brand of politics and his, quote, old status, a far cry from his days as the 29-year-old Senate candidate. Biden fell flat in the first nominating contests, finishing in 4th place in Iowa and 5th place in New Hampshire. Despite his early difficulties in 2 overwhelmingly white states, Biden counted on receiving strong support from black voters in later contests. A big win in South Carolina turned his campaign around, and after picking up a series of key endorsements from former primary opponents, he defeated a more progressive rival, Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, to win the Democratic nomination. The coronavirus pandemic upended the presidential race, and Biden limited himself to campaigning virtually for much of the spring as the outbreak ran rampant in America. He began making occasional in-person appearances, and in August he chose Senator Kamala Harris of California as his running mate. Biden confronted an extraordinary general election that played out as the pandemic continued to disrupt American life. He repeatedly condemned Trump's handling of the pandemic, while the president and his allies tried to portray Biden as a tool of the far left. The first general election debate quickly turned into a headache-inducing brawl, as Trump repeatedly interrupted his opponent. Just days after sharing the stage with Biden, the president announced that he had tested positive for the coronavirus. In his visits to battleground states, Biden held strategically arranged events with mask wearing and social distancing, abstaining from the packed events with big crowds that are a staple of presidential campaigns. He held a string of drive-in car rallies where voters beeped their horns to cheer him on. Election night stretched deep into the week as ballots were counted in key states. 4 days after the polls closed, Biden was declared the winner. In the weeks that followed, he rolled out a diverse slate of cabinet picks and prepared to take office. Biden received the COVID-19 vaccine and promised to step up vaccinations across the country, setting a goal of getting 100 million shots into the arms of Americans in his first 100 days in office. Early January brought a major boost to his hopes of passing his legislative agenda. Democrats won both runoff elections for Georgia's Senate seats, putting their party in control of the chamber. Biden's inauguration on Wednesday, January 20th, 2021, took place 48 years after he first arrived in Washington as one of the youngest people to be elected senator. With his swearing in, he became the oldest president in American history. President Biden and Vice President Harris delivered the results for the American people in their first year in office. The president and vice president made history growing our economy, addressing the climate crisis, and building a judiciary and government that represents America. Despite unprecedented challenges, 2021 was a year of record progress for working families. President Biden's first year was the greatest year of job creation in American history, with more than 6 million jobs created. The unemployment rate dropped from 6.2% when Biden took office to 3.9%, the biggest single drop in American history. The average number of Americans filing for unemployment has been near its lowest level since 1969. When the president took office, over 18 million were receiving unemployment benefits. Today, only 2 million are, also the biggest single-year drop in history. Experts estimate the lowest child poverty rate ever in 2021. Nearly 5 million Americans have newly gained health insurance coverage. The number of households reporting that they sometimes or often did not have enough food to eat dropped by 32%. More judges confirmed to lower federal courts than any president since President Kennedy. More African American women appointed to the U.S. Court of Appeals than any president, even over 8 years in history. Largest investments ever in the power grid, electric vehicle chargers, and climate resilience. First ever approvals of large-scale offshore wind projects. And last but definitely not least, Biden accomplished the most diverse administration in history. Most women, people of color, LGBTQ+, and first-generation Americans